It was awful.
Can you stand up and walk? Let me see. Let me see.
You want to see me walk?
Yes. Are you walking normal?
Watch me walk.
You're walking normal. Oh, come back.
I'm so upset with Daniel right now. This is our first full day together, and I'm seeing this whole other side to him, the way he's behaving.
It happened in a split second, right there in the middle of the restaurant, with everyone watching and the air so thick you could almost taste the tension. Daniel's voice, usually so smooth and careful, snapped into something sharp and cold. And Lisa's face froze as if she'd been slapped. The room didn't go silent, but for Lisa, it might as well have. Her heart hammered in her chest, her mind racing to make sense of what she'd just seen. This wasn't the Daniel she'd flown halfway across the world for, the man who'd whispered sweet promises and made her believe in second chances. This was someone else entirely, and for a moment, Lisa couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even look away. Welcome to Reality Sport. I'm Oliva, and if you're as shocked as Lisa, hit that subscribe button and drop your wildest theory in the comments, because what you're about to see will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about Daniel. Lisa's thoughts spun out of control, replaying the moment over and over. Did he really just wave his hand in her face, demanding she prove she wasn't drunk? Did he really speak to her like she was a child? In front of strangers, as if her dignity didn't matter? The humiliation burned, but underneath it, something colder crept in. Fear. Not the kind that makes you run, but the kind that makes you freeze, wondering if you ever knew the person standing next to you. She tried to remember the Daniel from the night before. The one who'd smiled at her across the table, who'd made her laugh, who'd seemed so attentive and gentle. Was that all an act? Was she so desperate to believe in the fantasy that she missed the warning signs? It's wild how quickly things can change. Just hours earlier, Lisa had been floating on a cloud, convinced she'd finally found her happy ending. She'd landed in Nigeria with her heart wide open, ready to start a new chapter, ready to trust again. Daniel had met her at the airport with flowers and a grin, and for a moment, it felt like every cheesy rom-com had come true. They'd laughed in the car, held hands, shared inside jokes. Lisa had let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. She'd ignored the little doubts, the awkward silences, the way Daniel sometimes looked past her instead of at her. She wanted to believe in the story they were writing together. But now, sitting in that restaurant, Lisa felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Every sweet word, every gentle touch, every promise suddenly felt like a setup for this moment, when the mask would slip and the real Daniel would step into the light. She wondered if anyone else could see it, if the other diners noticed the way his eyes hardened, the way his voice lost all warmth. Was she the only one who felt the chill? Or had everyone else seen it coming all along? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last. What had she missed? What was Daniel hiding? And most terrifying of all, what would he do next? The morning sun slipped through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold, but the warmth in the air didn't quite reach Daniel's side of the bed. Lisa woke up first, nerves buzzing, her mind replaying every detail of the night before. She watched Daniel sleep, searching for signs of affection in the way his hand rested on the pillow, the way his breath rose and fell. When he finally opened his eyes, she couldn't help herself. She showered him with compliments, her words tumbling out in a rush. She told him he had the best smile, the cutest laugh, even the most adorable belly button she'd ever seen. She laughed at herself. But deep down, she was hoping for something back, some sign that he felt the same spark. Daniel barely smiled, barely looked at her, his answers clipped and distant. He didn't return the compliments, didn't reach for her hand, didn't even meet her gaze for more than a second at a time. Lisa tried to brush it off, telling herself he was tired, maybe jet-lagged, maybe just not a morning person. But the silence between them grew heavier with every minute. She felt herself shrinking, her confidence slipping away. She needed him to say something, anything, to prove she hadn't made a mistake coming all this way. Every time she tried to bridge the gap, Daniel seemed to pull further away, his words careful, his tone flat. He asked if she wanted coffee, but didn't wait for her answer. He checked his phone, scrolled through messages, barely acknowledging her presence. Lisa felt invisible, and the ache in her chest grew sharper. Then she noticed the photo on the bedside table, a framed picture of her and her daughter, Faith. At first, her heart fluttered. Was this Daniel's way of showing he cared, that he was thinking about her family too? Or was it something else? The frame looked new, the photo printed in a hurry, almost like it was staged. Lisa's mind raced. Was this a sweet gesture, or was Daniel trying to prove something? Was he trying to convince her, or himself, that he was all in? Or was it a move straight out of a playbook, a way to make her feel safe while keeping her off balance? Lisa's thoughts spiraled. She wanted to believe in the romance, in the possibility that Daniel was sincere. But every time she reached for certainty, it slipped through her fingers. Was she seeing red flags? Or was she letting her own insecurities get the best of her? Was Daniel playing a long game? Or was she reading too much into every little thing? The questions pressed in, and Lisa realized she was already starting to doubt the story she told herself about this trip. About Daniel. About what their future could be. Night had fallen with so much hope, but by morning, the air in the hotel room felt heavy with disappointment. Lisa had tried to set the mood, her nerves raw but her heart open, wanting to feel close to Daniel in a way that would erase all the distance and doubts. But when the moment came, Daniel pulled away, blaming exhaustion, saying he was too tired, that the travel had worn him out. Lisa tried to laugh it off, but the sting of rejection lingered. She wrapped herself in the sheets, staring at the ceiling, replaying every awkward second. Was it her? Was it something she did? The silence between them grew, and Lisa's mind filled the gaps with every insecurity she'd ever carried. She thought about her past, the secrets she hadn't shared, the parts of herself she kept hidden even from Daniel. He didn't know the whole story, how long it had been since she'd been with a man, how her last relationships had all been with women, how she'd built walls to protect herself from heartbreak. She wondered if he could sense her fear, if he could see through the mask she wore. Every time she tried to open up, the words caught in her throat. She wanted to trust him, but the risk felt too great. What if he found out? What if he judged her? What if this was all a mistake? Morning brought a strange kind of relief. Daniel woke up in a better mood, suddenly attentive, suddenly eager to prove himself. He kissed her, touched her, made a show of being the perfect partner. This time, he didn't pull away. Lisa tried to let herself believe it was real, that last night was just a fluke, that Daniel was finally letting his guard down. But a small voice in her head whispered doubts. Was he making up for last night, or was he trying to erase the memory of his own failure? Was this about love, or was it about control? Lisa watched him closely, searching for signs of sincerity, but every gesture felt rehearsed, every word carefully chosen. The questions kept piling up. Was Daniel really into her? Or was he playing a part? Did he sense her secrets? Or was he too wrapped up in his own agenda to notice? Lisa felt exposed, vulnerable, caught between wanting to be seen and terrified of what might happen if she was. She wondered how much longer she could keep her past hidden, and what would happen if Daniel ever found out the truth. The city was already alive when they stepped out. The streets humming with voices, the air thick with the scent of spices and something unfamiliar. Lisa tried to keep up, her eyes darting from stall to stall, every sense on high alert. Daniel walked ahead, barely glancing back, his stride confident, almost impatient. He seemed at home here, weaving through the crowd, greeting vendors with a nod, but Lisa felt like she was moving through a dream she didn't quite understand. The colors were brighter, the sounds louder, the rules different. She tried to smile, to act like she belonged, but every step made her feel more out of place. Daniel stopped at a stall where a woman handed him a live chicken, its wings flapping, its eyes wide. He turned to Lisa, holding it out as if it were a bouquet of roses. Lisa's heart lurched. She'd grown up with chickens as pets, not dinner. The idea of holding one, knowing what would happen next, made her stomach twist. She shook her head, backing away, her voice trembling as she tried to explain. Daniel laughed, waving off her concerns, telling her not to be so sensitive. To him, it was nothing. A simple part of life. A tradition she needed to accept. Lisa tried to hide her discomfort, but the look on her face said it all. She handed the chicken back, her hands shaking, and Daniel rolled his eyes, already moving on to the next stall. The market was a maze, and Lisa felt herself getting lost, not just in the crowd, but in the growing distance between her and Daniel. Every time she hesitated, he seemed to get more impatient, more insistent that she follow his lead. He pointed out foods she'd never seen, urged her to try things she couldn't pronounce, corrected her when she got it wrong. Lisa wanted to be open, to embrace the experience, but Daniel's tone made it feel like a test she was destined to fail. She felt small, childish, like she was always one step behind. As they walked, Daniel's rules started to surface, each one a little sharper than the last. He told her not to vape in public, that it was disrespectful. He frowned when she reached for a bottle of water, telling her to ask before drinking anything. He commented on her hair, suggesting she wear it a certain way to please his family. Lisa tried to laugh it off, but the list kept growing. No vaping, no drinking without permission. Dress modestly. Speak softly. Smile, but not too much. The rules felt endless, and each one chipped away at her sense of self. Lisa tried to push back, to assert herself, but Daniel brushed her off, telling her it was all for her own good, that she needed to respect his culture if she wanted to fit in. He said it with a smile, but there was an edge to his words, a warning she couldn't ignore. Lisa wondered if this was what her life would look like, always following, always adjusting, always trying to measure up to someone else's expectations. She felt the walls closing in, the space for her own voice shrinking with every step. The chicken incident stuck with her, a symbol of everything she didn't understand, everything she couldn't control. She replayed it in her mind, the way Daniel had laughed at her discomfort, the way he dismissed her feelings as silly or childish. She wondered if he saw her as an equal, or if she was just another thing to manage, another box to check on his list. The thought made her chest tighten. She wanted to believe they could find common ground, that love could bridge the gap between their worlds, but Daniel's rules made it clear. This was his world, and she was expected to adapt. As the day wore on, Lisa's patience wore thin. She tried to keep up appearances, to smile and nod, but inside she was screaming. Every new rule felt like a test, every correction a reminder that she didn't belong. She wondered how much more she could take, how many pieces of herself she'd have to give up to make this work. Daniel seemed oblivious to her struggle, or maybe he just didn't care. He moved through the market with ease, never looking back, never slowing down. Lisa's mind raced with questions. Was this what her future would look like? Always bending, always breaking, always trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for her? Would Daniel ever see her for who she was, or would she always be a project, something to fix or control? The fear gnawed at her, growing with every step. She wanted to believe in the promise of their relationship, but the cracks were starting to show, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold everything together. The sun was setting by the time they left the market, the sky streaked with orange and pink. Lisa felt drained, her feet aching, her heart heavy. Daniel walked beside her, his mood light as if nothing had happened. He talked about dinner, about meeting his family, about all the things they still needed to do. Lisa nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment, every rule, every time she'd felt small or out of place. She wondered how far Daniel would push his control, and if she'd ever find the strength to push back. The question hung in the air, unanswered, as they walked into the fading light, both of them carrying secrets the other couldn't see. Daniel waited until they were back in the car, the city noise fading behind the rolled-up windows, before dropping the next bombshell. He turned to Lisa, his voice calm but his eyes unreadable, and told her that before they could get married, they needed his uncle's blessing. Lisa's stomach dropped. She thought the engagement was enough, that the hard part was over, but now there was another hurdle. Another test she wasn't sure she could pass. The way Daniel said it made it sound like a formality, but Lisa could hear the warning in his tone. This wasn't just about tradition. This was about proving herself, about convincing his family that she was worthy, that she belonged. Her mind raced with questions she was too afraid to ask. What would his uncle want to know? Would he ask about her past? About the things she'd tried so hard to keep hidden? Lisa felt her anxiety spike, her hands twisting in her lap. She tried to steady her breathing, to remind herself that she'd come this far, that she could handle whatever came next. But the fear was there, gnawing at her, whispering that she wasn't enough, that she'd never be enough. They stopped at a small clothing store, Daniel insisting she needed a traditional outfit for the meeting. The shop was cramped, the air thick with fabric and the scent of starch. Lisa tried to smile, to act excited, but her nerves were shot. The shopkeeper eyed her up and down, her gaze lingering a little too long. She pulled out a bright, patterned dress, holding it against Lisa's body, then shook her head, muttering something under her breath. Daniel translated, his voice flat. The dress might not fit, she said, because Lisa was a bit fat. The words hit Lisa like a slap. She laughed it off, but inside she felt herself shrinking, her insecurities roaring to life. She'd always struggled with her body image, always felt like she was too much or not enough. Now, in a foreign country, surrounded by strangers, those old wounds felt fresh again. Daniel didn't comfort her. He didn't even seem to notice the way her shoulders tensed, the way her eyes darted to the floor. He was focused on the task, on making sure everything was perfect for his family. Lisa tried to keep up, tried to hide her embarrassment, but the humiliation clung to her like a second skin. She wondered if Daniel saw her at all, or if she was just another box to check, another obstacle to overcome on his way to a new life. As they left the store, Lisa's mind spun with worries. She thought about Daniel's family, about the questions they might ask, about the secrets she'd buried so deep she sometimes forgot they were there. Would they ask about her past relationships? Would they judge her for the choices she'd made? For the things she'd done to survive? Lisa knew she couldn't tell the whole truth. Not here, not now. The risk was too great. But the thought of lying, of hiding who she was, made her feel sick. Daniel talked about his uncle with a mix of respect and fear. He said the blessing was everything, that without it, there could be no wedding, no future together. Lisa nodded, trying to look brave, but inside, she was falling apart. She wondered if Daniel's family would see through her, if they'd sense the secrets she carried. She wondered if Daniel would stand by her if things went wrong, or if he'd turn away, blaming her for not being enough. The pressure was suffocating, the stakes higher than ever. Lisa felt trapped, caught between the person she wanted to be and the person she was afraid to show. The family meeting loomed ahead, a test she wasn't sure she could pass, and for the first time, she wondered if her past would finally catch up with her. Lunch was supposed to be a break, a chance for Lisa to catch her breath and maybe find some common ground with Daniel after the morning's tension. Instead, it turned into a showcase for everything that was going wrong. They sat at a small table in a crowded restaurant, the air thick with the smell of spices and the low hum of conversation. Daniel ordered palm wine, his tone casual but his eyes sharp, watching Lisa's every move. When the drink arrived, he made a show of blessing it, his voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Then, he turned to Lisa, his expression suddenly serious, and told her not to try the same thing. Women, he said, shouldn't bless the wine. It was tradition. Lisa tried to laugh it off, but the sting was real. She felt like a child being scolded, her every move under scrutiny. She took a cautious sip, the taste unfamiliar and strong, and Daniel immediately warned her to be careful. He said it was too strong for her, that she might not be able to handle it. Lisa bristled at the implication, but she bit her tongue, not wanting to start another argument. She tried to focus on the food, hoping the meal would distract her, but Daniel wasn't done. He insisted she eat the way locals do, with her hands, scooping up the soup and fufu without utensils. Lisa had watched videos, tried to prepare, but her nerves got the best of her. She fumbled with the food, trying to mimic Daniel's movements, but he was quick to correct her, his tone growing sharper with each mistake. He told her she was doing it wrong, that she needed to boil the fufu in her mouth before swallowing. Lisa tried to keep up, but the pressure was overwhelming. When she asked for a spoon, Daniel flatly refused, insisting she do it his way. Then, without warning, he reached over and dipped his hand into her soup, showing her how it was done. Lisa recoiled, her stomach turning at the thought of someone else's fingers in her food. She worked in healthcare, she knew how many germs could hide under fingernails, and the sight made her skin crawl. Daniel didn't seem to notice her discomfort, or maybe he didn't care. He kept pushing, kept correcting, his patience wearing thin. The tension built with every bite, every sip, every sideways glance. Lisa felt trapped, her frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. She tried to keep her cool, but Daniel's attitude made it impossible. He acted like he was teaching her, but every word felt like a put-down, every correction a reminder that she didn't belong. When she finally snapped, telling him to stop talking to her like a child, Daniel's face hardened. He waved his hand in front of her face, demanding she stand up and walk to prove she wasn't drunk. The humiliation was instant and complete. Lisa's cheeks burned as she stood, her legs shaking, the eyes of the restaurant on her. She walked across the floor, her head held high, refusing to let Daniel see her cry. Inside, though, she was falling apart. The lunch that was supposed to bring them closer had only driven them further apart. Daniel's need for control, his constant corrections, his public power play, it was all too much. Lisa wondered if this was the real Daniel, the man behind the mask, and if she was finally seeing the truth. She wondered how much more she could take before she snapped, before she stopped trying to fit into a world that seemed determined to keep her out. The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. As they left the restaurant, both of them pretending nothing had happened, but knowing everything had changed. Lisa didn't wait for Daniel to say another word. She pushed back her chair, grabbed her bag, and walked straight out of the restaurant, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the city noise outside. She didn't care who was watching, didn't care if Daniel followed. For the first time since she landed, she let herself feel the anger, the humiliation, the sting of being treated like she didn't matter. She found a quiet spot near the curb, pulled out her vape, and took a long drag, the familiar burn grounding her as she tried to steady her breath. She told herself she wouldn't cry. Not here, not now, not for him. Inside, Daniel realized too late that he'd pushed her too far. He rushed out after her, his face tight with worry, his eyes darting from Lisa to the street and back again. For a moment, he hesitated, as if weighing his options. Lisa could see the calculation in his eyes, the panic of someone who'd just watched his best chance at a new life walk out the door. He softened his voice, called her his queen, tried to coax her back with sweet words and gentle touches. He apologized, said he was only looking out for her, that he didn't mean to upset her. Lisa wanted to believe him, wanted to let herself be soothed, but the memory of his harsh words was still fresh, the wound still raw. Daniel didn't stop there. He shifted the conversation, bringing up her vaping, warning her that his uncle would never approve if he found out. He said he'd have to tell his family, but he'd frame it in a way that made her look better, as long as she promised to try to quit. Lisa heard the threat behind the offer, the way Daniel was resetting the rules, putting her back in her place. The power dynamic shifted again, and Lisa felt herself slipping, caught between wanting to fight and wanting to keep the peace. She wondered if she was trapped, if Daniel would always find a way to pull her back in, to make her doubt herself. She wondered if she'd ever find the strength to stand up for herself, to walk away for good. The city buzzed around them, but for Lisa, the world had narrowed to this moment, this choice, this impossible question. Stay and keep bending, or finally break free. Lisa sat in the back seat of the car, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles turned white. The city outside blurred past the window, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the conversation that waited for her at Daniel's uncle's house, the questions she couldn't answer, the secrets she couldn't afford to let slip. Every mile brought her closer to a moment she'd been dreading since Daniel first mentioned his family's blessing. She tried to steady her breath, but her mind kept racing, replaying every lie, every half-truth, every detail she'd carefully edited out of her story. She wondered if Daniel could sense her fear, if he could see the way her shoulders tensed every time he mentioned his uncle's name. Daniel, for his part, seemed calm, almost smug, as if he'd already decided how the meeting would go. He talked about his uncle with a mix of reverence and calculation, describing him as the final gatekeeper, the one person whose approval mattered more than anyone else's. Lisa listened, nodding when she was supposed to, but inside she was screaming. She knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about Daniel's future, about his chance at a new life, about the green card that hovered over every conversation like a shadow. Lisa felt the weight of it pressing down on her, the knowledge that one wrong answer could ruin everything. She thought about all the things she hadn't told Daniel, all the parts of herself she'd kept hidden. He didn't know about her past relationships, about the years she'd spent with women, about the marriage she'd ended because she couldn't keep pretending. He didn't know about the nights she'd spent alone, wondering if she'd ever be able to trust anyone again. Lisa had built her life on secrets, on the hope that if she kept them buried deep enough, no one would ever find them. But now, with Daniel's family waiting, those secrets felt closer to the surface than ever. The car slowed as they turned onto a narrow street lined with houses. Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand, his grip firm, almost possessive. He told her to relax, to trust him, that everything would be fine as long as she followed his lead. Lisa tried to smile, but her lips barely moved. She wondered if Daniel would still want her if he knew the truth, if his family would accept her if they knew who she really was. The fear was suffocating, a knot in her chest that wouldn't loosen no matter how hard she tried to breathe. As they pulled up to the house, Lisa's heart pounded so loudly she was sure Daniel could hear it. She watched as he straightened his shirt, checked his reflection in the window, and flashed her a reassuring smile. He looked so sure of himself, so certain that he could control the outcome. Lisa envied his confidence, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a trap. She stepped out of the car, her legs unsteady, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Inside, the house was crowded, the air thick with the smell of cooking and the sound of voices. Daniel's uncle sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Lisa felt every eye in the room on her as she took her seat, her hands trembling in her lap. The questions started almost immediately. Where was she from? What did she do for work? Why did she want to marry Daniel? Lisa answered as best she could, her voice steady but her mind spinning. She tried to keep her story straight, to remember which details she'd shared and which she'd left out. Every question felt like a test, every answer a potential landmine. Daniel watched her closely, his eyes never leaving her face. Lisa wondered if he was waiting for her to slip up, if he was hoping she'd say something that would give him an excuse to walk away. She tried to read his expression, but he gave nothing away. The pressure built with every passing minute, the stakes growing higher with every question. Lisa felt like she was balancing on a knife's edge, one wrong move away from disaster. She thought about the green card, about the life Daniel wanted in America, about the promises he'd made and the future they'd planned. She wondered if any of it was real, or if she was just a means to an end. The thought made her chest ache. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the questions, on the need to survive this interrogation. She told herself she could do it, that she could keep her secrets for one more day, that she could be the person Daniel's family wanted her to be. But as the questions grew more personal, Lisa felt her resolve start to crack. She stumbled over her words, hesitated when asked about her past, her mind scrambling for answers that wouldn't give her away. She saw the suspicion in Daniel's uncle's eyes, the way he leaned forward, pressing her for details. Lisa felt the walls closing in, the room growing smaller with every question. She wondered if honesty would destroy everything, or if another lie would buy her more time. Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand again, his grip tighter this time, a silent warning to stay on script. Lisa forced a smile, but inside she was falling apart. She wondered how much longer she could keep up the act, how much more she could hide before the truth finally came out. The stakes had never been higher. Her love, her reputation, her safety, all hanging in the balance. The family's approval was the final test, and Lisa wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. The night stretched ahead, full of questions she couldn't answer and secrets she couldn't keep, and Lisa realized that sometimes the hardest thing isn't telling the truth, it's living with the lies. The hours before the family meeting dragged on, each minute stretching Lisa's nerves tighter. She sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at her reflection in the small, warped mirror, trying to practice her answers, smoothing her dress, fixing her hair, but nothing could settle the storm inside her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's uncle's face, stern and unreadable, and heard the questions she dreaded most. The house was alive with the sounds of Daniel's relatives moving in and out, laughter and conversation echoing down the hallway. But Lisa felt completely alone, an outsider rehearsing for a role she wasn't sure she could play. Daniel moved through the house with a confidence that only made Lisa feel more exposed. He checked on her every so often, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, telling her to relax, to trust him, that everything would be fine if she just followed his lead. But Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that she was being set up, that Daniel was less concerned about her and more about how she would perform in front of his family. She wondered if he cared about her at all, or if she was simply the last piece in a puzzle he'd been putting together for months. The way he watched her, the way he corrected her, the way he seemed to switch between charm and coldness, it all felt calculated, like he was testing her, waiting to see if she'd crack. As the afternoon sun faded, Daniel's uncle called everyone into the living room. Lisa's heart pounded as she took her seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The room was crowded, the air thick with expectation. Daniel sat beside her, his posture perfect, his face a mask of calm. His uncle began with polite questions, asking about Lisa's family, her job, her plans for the future. Lisa answered carefully, her voice steady, but she could feel the tension building with every word. The questions grew more pointed, circling around her past, her intentions, her commitment to Daniel. Lisa felt sweat bead at her temples, her mind racing to keep her story straight. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel's uncle asked about Lisa's previous marriage. The room went silent. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She glanced at Daniel, searching his face for a sign, but he looked straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Lisa stumbled through her answer, saying the marriage ended years ago, that she and her ex had simply grown apart. She left out the truth, the years she'd spent with women, the secrets she'd buried, the parts of herself she'd never shared with Daniel or anyone else in this room. She could feel the suspicion in the air, the way Daniel's family exchanged glances, the way his uncle's eyes narrowed as he listened. Lisa's anxiety peaked as the questions kept coming, each one a little closer to the truth she was desperate to hide. She felt like she was walking a tightrope, one wrong word away from disaster. Daniel squeezed her hand under the table, his grip almost painful, a silent reminder to stay on script. Lisa forced a smile, but inside, she was unraveling. She wondered if Daniel was protecting her or protecting himself, if he cared about her happiness or only about getting through this meeting with his plans intact. Then, just as Lisa thought she might make it through, Daniel's cousin spoke up, asking if Lisa had ever been to Nigeria before, if she'd ever been in a relationship with someone from a different culture. The question caught her off guard. She hesitated, her mind scrambling for an answer that wouldn't give her away. She said no, that this was all new to her, that she was excited to learn and grow with Daniel. But the cousin didn't look convinced. Lisa saw the doubt in his eyes, the way he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as if waiting for her to slip. The meeting ended with polite smiles and promises to talk more over dinner. but Lisa could feel the tension lingering in the air. As the family drifted out of the room, Daniel pulled her aside, his voice low and urgent. He told her she'd done well, that his uncle seemed satisfied, but Lisa could hear the warning in his tone. He reminded her again about the vaping, about the need to present herself a certain way, about the importance of keeping up appearances until the wedding. Lisa nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying every question, every answer, every moment she'd almost let the truth slip. As night fell, Lisa sat alone in the guest room, staring at her phone, wondering if she should call her daughter, if she should tell someone what was happening. She felt trapped, caught between the life she'd left behind and the future she wasn't sure she wanted. She thought about Daniel, about the way he'd changed since she arrived, about the moments when his charm slipped and something colder took its place. She wondered if she was in love with the real Daniel or with the version he showed her when he wanted something. Then, as she was about to turn off the light, she heard voices in the hallway, Daniel and his uncle speaking in low, urgent tones. She couldn't make out every word, but she caught enough to know they were talking about her, about the wedding, about what would happen if the truth came out. Lisa's heart raced as she pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear more. She heard Daniel say something about doing whatever it takes, about not letting this chance slip away. The words sent a chill down her spine. Was Daniel willing to lie for her, or was he planning to use her secrets against her if things went wrong? Lisa lay awake for hours, replaying the conversation, wondering what Daniel's true motives were. Was he in this for love? Or was she just a ticket to a better life? Was she safe? Or was she being set up for heartbreak? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more urgent than the last. She knew the family meeting was only the beginning, that the real test was still to come. And as she drifted into a restless sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that a new secret was about to surface, one that would change everything. If you think this was wild, wait until you see what happens when Daniel's past comes knocking at the door. You won't believe who shows up next, and what they reveal could blow this whole story wide open.